Is it just me, or does the holiday season always feel like the Battlefront season? I can't really pinpoint why that is, and I had a bunch of you in the stream recently tell me that you felt the same way. I think it might have to do with the fact that the holiday season has always been full of Star Wars. That's usually when they've dropped the movies. Both Battlefront games came out in late November, and a lot of the big updates for the games have always dropped in December. So I think it's natural that a lot of people relate Battlefront with the holiday season. And I know some of you will say, but why are you still talking about Battlefront? This game hasn't had any updates for years and years. Well, believe it or not, there's still a lot of people interested in this game. Honestly, more than I expected, because every time I make a video about Battlefront 1 or Battlefront 2, it gets a lot of views, interactions, happy comments, nostalgia comments, and people who still play the game. And I think that's probably gonna be the case until a solid multiplayer replacement comes out, which there doesn't seem to be any plans for. So I'm gonna keep creating content about these games, even if they're not actively updated, as long as you guys keep watching them. So today, I wanted to go over top 10 Battlefront updates. Not me Battlefront updates, top 10 Battlefront updates from both the first and the second game by DICE. This is obviously a highly subjective list, so I kindly ask you to watch it, listen to my motivations, and then after that feel free to leave your top 10 or top 5 list in the comments below, as I'm sure it will vary a lot from mine, but hopefully there are a few points that we can agree on. So let's jump straight into it. Starting off at the number 10 spot, we have the bow rifle update for Star Wars Battlefront 1. This wasn't actually an update, as this rifle actually arrived with the Scarif update, but wasn't released until later in December. And the way they did this, which is why I'm putting this on the list, is that you actually had to kill someone who had the bow rifle to get the bow rifle yourself. And this started off with a bunch of the developers actually live streaming on Twitch and such, playing on the various platforms, having people hunt them and kill them. It obviously spread pretty fast after that, since almost every kill meant that one new person would get the bow rifle. The actual gun per se, I think most of us stopped using fairly early, as it was good for melee, but other than that, nothing impressive. But just seeing the community rally together, hunt the developers, and all try to unlock the bow rifle was one of my fondest memories from Battlefront 2015. At the number 9 spot, we have the progression update for Star Wars Battlefront 2 that dropped in March 2018. Obviously, this is how the game should have launched, but I still feel like this earned a spot on the list because it was such a important moment for the game. Only 4 months after the game came out, they performed what Dennis called it open heart surgery on the game by completely stripping the progression system and remaking it into a linear progression where you get levels for all your classes, vehicles, and heroes that you can then unlock star cards with. You're all familiar with this, of course, but it was a big update for the game, and it honestly took faster than I expected for them to actually pull off this update. We did also get the Battlefront 1 Bespin map in the same update as a little bonus to actually get some new content to play as well. At the number 8 spot, we have the Night on Endor update from April 2018. Most importantly, we got 8 new hero appearances, such as the legendary Wounded Chewbacca skin and Yoda with a hood on. Absolute game changers. Jokes aside, the most important part was obviously Ewok Hunt, a mode that was really unique and really fun, something I wouldn't have expected from a game like Battlefront 2. And I recently revisited this game mode in a live stream and realized how much fun it is. It's not the kind of game mode like Supremacy you can grind for hours and hours, but it's more the kind of thing that's a little bit scary, very exciting, and really fun if you hop on every now and then and play it. With all the mechanics such as disabling the field of view changes, having almost no light as a stormtrooper, they made this into a truly unique experience that I still think is really good in 2023. On the 7th spot, I put the BB update from February 2020. I know this is an update that not all of you might agree with me on, as I do know a lot of people thought BB-8 and BB-9E were not fun additions to the game. They would have rather seen Ahsoka and Ventress, and I mean, if I had to pick, I'd probably say the same. But I'm happy they actually took some risks and added characters that maybe not a lot of people expected, and made some unique stuff, not just another lightsaber wielder or another blaster hero, but these obviously played completely differently, and BB-8's cable spin is still one of the most fun abilities to use in the game. So this was an update that I was very happy to see, and on top of that we also got the sequel Era Supremacy in this update, with the interiors for the MC-85 Star Cruiser and the Resurgent class Star Destroyer, 2 interior maps that I really enjoy. So overall, a very good update, and one of the few updates where we actually got 2 heroes, if maybe that's actually the only update we got 2 heroes, if I'm not mistaken. At the number 6 spot, I'm actually going back a little bit in time to December 2017 and the first and actually only season we got for Battlefront 2, the Last Jedi season. This was obviously in the middle of the whole loot box fiasco, which kind of overshadowed all of this. But this was a really fun piece of content, to be honest, because we got a continuation of the campaign, which tied it directly into The Last Jedi and finished up Iden Versio's story, which I thought was really cool to basically see The Last Jedi from a different perspective in the game. We also got Finn and Phasma, so yes, I take back what I said in my previous point. We did get 2 heroes at 2 occasions, now that I think about it. But also, something that was really cool with this season was that you actually got to choose a side to fight for, the Resistance or the First Order, and then you had multiple weeks of content drops, challenges to do, and bonuses to receive. A very interactive and fun season, and unfortunately that kind of season never really returned again. We obviously got a lot of good content drops after that, but not in that same format, which I think was a bit of a shame. At the number 5 spot, we're jumping back to Battlefront 1 and the Death Star DLC of September 2016. This was a really fun and unique DLC that included Chewbacca and Bossk and multiple maps within the Death Star, weapons such as the TL-50 Heavy Repeater and the Briar Pistol. But most importantly, the actual Battle Station mode, a 3-step mode where you first off had to take out a Star Destroyer, then you had to extract R2-D2, who you could also play as, and then destroy the actual Death Star. And I think the thrill of actually destroying the Death Star was something that I didn't really feel in any other parts of the game. It was so exciting flying up that trench run and actually manage to fire off those torpedoes. And at least for me personally, it was a very fun memory as I was able to host the official reveal stream for this DLC with Dennis, Guillaume and CJ and pull off that maneuver on the Death Star live in front of thousands of people. So to me, the Death Star DLC is definitely one of the highlights for me when it comes to Battlefront 1. And on the number 4 spot, we have the cooperation update, which I might not have appreciated as much back then as I do now. It did, however, introduce Felucia and the Clone Commando, which was really the main things that I cared about back then, new multiplayer content. And those alone were great updates. Although Felucia didn't turn out to be my favorite planet to play on, it was a beautiful planet and it was great to have a new location. But honestly, the co-op and instant action additions were probably the most important stuff to arrive in this update, as even though I didn't play it much back then, I now really enjoy jumping into co-op. It's such a relaxed environment compared to playing online, as you will still get some intense battles, but you can actually go on some long kill streaks with heroes and don't feel like you get focused by 10 people at once like you usually do in multiplayer. And I do know that a lot of more casual players really enjoy these modes, so I think it was a fantastic addition, and it's also something that really helps out in locations where it might be hard to find a server, and maybe in the future too, once the server population slowly goes down, or if they release any other Star Wars multiplayer game, it will be great to have these modes so that you can easily jump back into the game without worrying about finding a server filled with 40 players. At the number 3 spot, we have the Celebration update for Battlefront 2 in December 2019. It didn't actually contain that much content. We got a couple of BX Commando variants, ARC Trooper skins, Clone Commando skins, and a Droideka skin. But it's not really the content that I think was important here, but the milestone, the trailer. Because this is kind of when Battlefront 2 peaked. Obviously we got the Rise of Skywalker update, which will not be on this list because it's kind of ties a little bit into this, but it kind of captures the same moment. The Rise of Skywalker update had the content, the Celebration update had the actual milestone. And that trailer is still, to this day, probably one of, if not my favorite game trailer ever. It showed off the new content in the first half and then just made this absolutely beautiful transition to feature years of content that Battlefront 2 received, and it still brings a tear to my eye every time I go back and watch this trailer. It truly was something spectacular the developers did with this game, and that's why I think this update is so important to me. At the second spot, we've got the Outer Rim DLC for Battlefront 1, which arrived in March 2016. You might be surprised to see this as high up, but to me it was my favorite DLC of the first game. I never thought I'd say that back then or really at any point, but it just turned out to be my favorite update. We got 4 new maps, 2 on Tatooine and 2 on Salast, Greedo and Ninub, Extraction, and a bunch of blasters and star cards such as the Scattergun, Adrenaline Stim, and the Railway Blaster. I think the reason to why I liked this so much was just that everything was negative about this initially. Greedo, Ninub, why are we getting those? No one likes them. And then they turned out to be some of the favorites within the Battlefront franchise ever. There's still memes about Ninub popping up every now and then, and they just turned out to be fantastic gameplay-wise. And Extraction, still one of my favorite modes in any of the Battlefront games. I still think the first game did a little bit better version of Extraction than the second one did, but if there was a DLC I went back and played over and over, it was definitely the Outer Rim DLC. It was also kind of the peak for the first game, and there were so many people playing at this point, and I think it was also probably the biggest growth I've ever had on my channel with like 10 or 20,000 subscribers in 1 month, because there was so much people interested in the new content coming out. So that will obviously make me a little bit biased towards this update, but I think in general a lot of people can agree that the Outer Rim DLC was one of the best, if not the best DLC to come out for the first game. So at the number 1 spot, what do I have here? Well, most of you have probably figured it out by now.
The balance of the Force has been shaken. The Clone Wars have begun.
The Battle of Geonosis update for Star Wars Battlefront 2 that arrived in November 2018, exactly 1 year from when the game was first released. I think this was kind of the big turning point for Battlefront 2. Sure, we got the updated progression system, the Han Solo season and stuff, but this is when the actual content we had been waiting for came out. Geonosis for Galactic Assault, ATTs, Bark Speeders, Stab, Obi-Wan Kenobi, 212th Battalion skin, the Grievous Shatter skin, and he arrived just a month before this, so you can kind of count them into the same update, and Obi-Wan's Jedi robes. This was just peak Battlefront 2, at least when it comes to absolute hype. Obviously the game itself was in a better state 2 years later, but content-wise, this was something people were so excited for, and I remember being at DICE playing this for the first time, and it was just mind blown of how good it was. And it still is probably the best Galactic Assault map in the game. Just the way they worked the ATTEs into the objectives and making the objectives actual fun to play. Like, there's not a lot of maps that I like to play the objective on, or that I like to ride vehicles on, or that I like to destroy vehicles on, but the Battle of Geonosis really captures that feeling and just makes it into the ultimate Galactic Assault map. I would probably put it at the number 1 spot even without Obi-Wan, but that's just a bonus. Having Obi-Wan and Grievous face off on Geonosis, plus one of the best skins they ever made to the game, Grievous Shattered skin, just makes this into an overall amazing update that I easily put on the first spot. It was tricky for me to pick the spots for the other ones, and honestly some of them could have moved up and down, but the number 1 spot I knew right away, the Battle of Geonosis is gonna take that, there's no question about it. But I would love to hear in the comments below, which one was your favorite update or favorite updates for the 2 games? And do you agree with my list, or is it completely off the mark? Let me know. And also, is Battlefront a holiday game for you? And are you jumping back on the Battlefront this week? I hope you all have a fantastic holiday, Merry Christmas, and I will see you in the live streams over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.